Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel. My name's Rachel Parker. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an Anglican priest. I'm responsible for rector for Dayspring Ministries, which is a collaboration of three churches: St. Mary's Edgerton, St. Saviour's in Vermilion, and St. Thomas in Wainwright, in the Anglican Church of Canada's Diocese of Edmonton, in, as I said, the beautiful province of Alberta. Welcome. Today is Friday, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about the ministry of the power of the gift of presence. Yesterday, I talked about mental health and the importance of recognizing how absolutely essential it is that we not worry about stigma, and that we're very careful with other people, that we don't stigmatize people when they reach out for assistance with finding a good balance for their mental health. And one of the ways I think that we can do that is through the gift of presence. Now, back in Advent, back before Christmas, I was doing a devotional from Advent Reflections 2022, put out by On Eagle's Wings, which is a ministry that takes the gospel north in Canada, up to Northwest Territories, to Nunavut, to the Yukon, to places where that maybe the church hasn't reached or people are more remote. And so this is a devotion written by Bishop John Hanson. He is a Roman Catholic from the Diocese of Mackenzie Fort Smith in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. And it's called The Gift of Presence. And he begins with quoting Luke, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 43 to 44. "And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leaped for joy." That was Elizabeth speaking to her cousin Mary, or speaking to God about her cousin Mary. And Bishop Hanson says here, "I recall one of my first visits to the small northern community of Tutuyaktuk. It was a little hamlet, but I was overwhelmed by the newness of it all and was trying not to feel too out of place. Sister Faye, the local pastoral leader, in an effort to help me get to know people, asked one of the young men to take me fishing on the point. Without hesitation, he agreed, and we gathered a couple of rods and some tackle and walked the short distance to a small spit of land that separated the calm waters of the natural harbor from the open ocean beyond. After fishing for a while without any luck, I broke the silence by asking, 'Do you catch many fish here?' His simple response was, 'There are no fish here.' I then realized that this was not about fishing. This was a way of making the new person feel welcome. No words, nothing accomplished, just spending time in one another's presence. As we wait for the coming of Christ," this was the prayer that the bishop shared before Christmas. "As we wait for the coming of Christ, may we find in the stillness of the Advent peace the gift of God's presence in our hearts. Through that gift, may we be the same comfort for others that Mary was for Elizabeth and that God is for us." That sense of presence. How many times in your life have you been sitting with somebody or having a conversation and maybe it sort of went quiet, and you have that feeling like you got to fill up the space. You can't just sit in someone's presence quietly. That often happens, I think, with newcomers or new people who are just acquaintances or people who really are uncomfortable with silence. But have you ever noticed that when you're with a family member or a friend, there are times when you can absolutely just be like hanging out and realize, we haven't said a word for 10 minutes and it's totally comfortable. That sense of being comfortable in another's presence. Sometimes it's not about the fishing. Sometimes it's not about what your purpose is. Sometimes we don't have to have an intended purpose. Sometimes it's simply about being present with another person, being open to hearing whatever words they may share, but also being open to sharing silence with them. Silence can be a very difficult thing for many of us. For instance, silence on this YouTube video would probably be painful, probably as bad as fingernails on a chalkboard if I just sat here and didn't talk for 5 minutes. You might kind of wonder, what the heck is she doing? Because this medium isn't about silence, unless we were having some kind of a Zoom retreat day or something. This particular avenue of communication doesn't work as well with silence. But there are other things that do. For instance, if we were sitting together, you and I had sat down, had a cup of coffee together, there wouldn't be anything wrong if, as we sipped our coffee, we just didn't speak for a while. Sometimes we get caught up in our thoughts. Sometimes we just get caught up in the moment and what it is to just be. When the sister invited the bishop to go fishing and invited the young man to take him fishing, she knew there weren't any fish to be caught. She knew that this would be, in some ways, an act of futility. You go out there and you throw out your line and you reel it in and you over and over, just to find out there weren't actually any fish to catch. That can seem like a really stupid thing to do, can it? Probably the fishermen in the group, or the fisher people who are watching, know what I mean. But that's the thing about fishing, is while we say it's about catching fish, how often is it really about that outcome? How often is it about actually bringing home fish? We have a fishing boat, and when we were in Halifax in Nova Scotia, Rob would go out all the time. And sometimes I'd go with him and I'd read my book and steer the boat once in a while, and he would fish. Sometimes he'd go out by himself, go out with my stepson, with Dan. Not very often did he bring home fish. Sometimes he caught them and threw them back. Most often, if he caught them, he threw them back. Sometimes he never caught anything. And well, that's, it can be disappointing. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't about the catching of fish. It was about the presence of being out in God's country. It was about being out on the water, listening to the sound of the loons, and seeing the fish jump over there, far away from where your hook is, and seeing other people out, and that camaraderie that comes with another bass boat, floating by you, and the nod that people give, or how you catch any. That community that builds up because you have a common thing. You have a common theme. You have something in common. No expectation of long conversations. No expectation that everybody's going to stop and gather, but simply being present. There's something really important about being present for others and allowing others to be present for us. Sometimes we need to talk. Sometimes you need to have somebody who will you can pick up the phone or get on FaceTime and just, sit there, or go in your front porch and sit with your coffee and just talk their ear off. Just blah, 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 blah. Sometimes my husband tells me I have verbal diarrhea. That kind of thing. Sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you need to be the one who listens. Someone else needs you. And sometimes you just need to be. Lots of times when we do something like that, when we need to have that ministry of presence, that sense of just being with someone else, we have this desire, this 21st century need to be active. We have to be doing something, that we can't just sit and have a conversation, or worse yet, we can't just sit and be quiet together. And if you can't do that, if you really can't find that you could just sit and be silent with someone, then do something together silently. Go for a walk and don't talk. Get into the garden and dig around and pull weeds, but don't talk. Go for a drive. See the sights. Look at a beautiful sunset or a sunrise and not talk. Because your presence with another person and their presence with you is just as healing as a conversation might be. For your mental health, even your physical health, your blood pressure lowering, your pulse slowing down as you just relax into another's presence, or they relax into yours. That incredible gift of just being there for one another and knowing that there is someone else that's there for you, and your ability to be there for someone else, that in itself is an incredible gift for your physical health and your mental health, for your spiritual health. So as you go about your day, as you have your weekend now, I really do encourage you to just recognize that silence, that ministry of presence, that recognition that not every moment has to be charged with activity or conversation. Sometimes it just needs to be charged with community, friendship, love, listening. Have a great weekend. God bless you. I will be back on Sunday for Gospel on the Go for the fourth Sunday after Epiphany. And I will be back here on Monday for Church at Home with Rachel. Have an awesome weekend. God bless.